The blizzard turned the grocery store into a glowing island at 4:37 p.m. I was 61, arms full of the usual midweek haul, ground turkey, celery, a bag of apples, when the elderly woman at the register began counting nickels and dimes with trembling precision. Her basket held the barest necessities: half a loaf of day-old rye, a pint of 2%, 2 carrots, 1 bruised apple. Total, $7.19. She had $6.42. The cashier, a young man named Javier with kind but weary eyes, spoke gently. "You're short 77 cents. She frowned at the coins as though they had betrayed her. I counted twice at home. The line behind me shifted restlessly. Outside the glass doors snow fell in thick, silent sheets. I watched her thin shoulders curve inward and felt the familiar tug I'd ignored for decades. Every time Vernon's silences grew colder, every time his trips stretched longer, every time the house felt more like a museum of old promises than a home. I stepped forward, slid a 10 across the counter. "Put hers on mine." The woman turned. Her eyes weren't faded by age. They were sharp, almost luminous, and they fixed on me with unsettling clarity. "You don't need to do that, child." "It's $7, I said. "Not a mortgage payment." She studied me a long moment, then nodded once. Generosity keeps its own ledger. I paid for both, gathered my bags, and started for the exit. Halfway there, a small, surprisingly strong hand closed around my forearm. She had followed me, voice low and urgent. "When your husband leaves tonight," she whispered, close enough that I smelled camphor and dried lavender, "do not disturb the snow in the yard. No matter what he asks. Leave every flake exactly where it falls until sunrise." "Swear it to me." I blinked. "I'm sorry." "Leave the snow untouched," she repeated, fingers tightening. "Your future depends on it." The doors slid open. Cold rushed in. I nodded, more to escape the intensity of her gaze than from conviction, and she released me, vanishing into the white curtain beyond the glass. Vernon's pickup was already running when I reached home. He'd come back early from dispatch, duffel on the porch, face set in the familiar lines of impatience. 36 years of marriage, and the last 9 had been mostly absences separated by brief, mechanical reunions. "Road's calling early," he said, taking the grocery bag without looking inside. "Storm's supposed to dump another foot. Clear the drive before you turn in or I'll bury the tires when I get back." I thought of the woman's eyes. "It's still coming down hard. Maybe wait till light." He snorted. "You want me stuck here another day? Do it tonight. I'm gone in 30. He showered, changed into driving clothes, pressed a quick kiss to my temple, more habit than affection, and backed out into the swirling dark. I stood on the porch watching his taillights dissolve. The yard was already a blank canvas. I could have grabbed the shovel. Instead I went inside, locked the deadbolt, turned off the motion lights, and tried to convince myself the woman had been eccentric, lonely, harmless. Sleep came in shallow waves. Every house-settling creak sounded like a footstep. Around 2:40 a.m. I woke to stillness. The wind had quit. I slipped to the living room window and lifted the curtain. The yard lay pristine under fresh powder, except for one thing. A single line of boot prints, large, deliberate, marched from the street, through the gate I'd left unlatched, straight to the house. They circled the foundation once, paused at every ground floor window, then retraced the same path out. No attempt to force entry. No damage. Just careful, thorough reconnaissance. My pulse hammered in my throat. I stood frozen until my bare feet ached, staring at evidence that someone had walked around my home while I slept, alone, while Vernon was hundreds of miles away. At first light I called Sergeant Navarro, the community officer I'd known since he patrolled our street on a bicycle. He arrived in 28 minutes, coffee in hand, expression calm but watchful. "Show me," he said. We stepped onto the porch. The tracks were still sharp. Navarro crouched, measured stride, studded tread. Size 12, maybe 13. Heavy. Not hurrying. Walking like he owned the night. These aren't teenagers being stupid. He followed the prints with his eyes. Stopped at every window. Looked in. Checked latches, maybe. Then left the way he came. No tire marks on the street. Snow was still falling when he arrived, so he parked on the cleared road and walked in. "Why?" My voice cracked. "There's nothing here worth taking." "Sometimes it's not about taking," Navarro said quietly. "Sometimes it's about knowing what's inside. Layout.
Timing. Who's home?
Who isn't?
He glanced at Vernon's empty spot in the drive.
Your husband's on a long haul.
Left last night.
At least a week.
Navarro nodded slowly.
Mind if I ask when the house was last appraised?
I frowned. Never. Why?
Because someone ordered a late evening appraisal 3 nights ago.
From Ridgewood Realty Group. Client name, Vernon Calder.
Power of attorney attached, supposedly signed by you.
The world tilted.
I never signed anything.
I believe you, he said. But the agency didn't question it.
Appraiser came at 11:15 p.m., your husband's specific request. Said daytime visits weren't possible. Wanted the property viewed quietly.
I stared at the tracks again. They weren't random.
They were deliberate. Professional. A man measuring sight lines, entry points, escape routes, preparing to sell a house he had no legal right to sell.
Navarro touched my arm. Let's go inside.
You're shaking.
We sat at the kitchen table. He called the agency.
They confirmed Vernon had come in person, presented the notarized power of attorney, requested the night visit, accepted the $465,000 valuation, and instructed them to mark it discreetly. A cash buyer was already circling. By 11 a.m. the agency had pulled the listing. By 1 p.m. a fraud detective was at my door with a warrant for the notary who'd stamped the forged signature. By dusk Vernon's rig was intercepted in Nebraska. He was taken into custody without incident.
He confessed in the interview room. Online gambling debt. Creditors pressing.
The house, mortgage-free, titled solely in my name, was the quickest exit. He'd planned to wire the proceeds, vanish, begin again somewhere new. He never meant for me to know until the closing statement arrived.
Suspended sentence.
Restitution.
Divorce finalized in 70 days. Spring arrived early.
Crocuses pushed through the last patches of snow along the fence I'd planted 32 years ago. I stood on the porch with tea, watching green emerge from white, remembering the boot prints that had once terrified me. They liberated me. The old woman never returned to the store. No one remembered her name. Javier thought she'd been in once, perhaps twice. Mrs. Alvarez across the street swore she glimpsed a small figure in a shawl walking the sidewalk the night the tracks appeared, then vanish into the storm.
I don't know who she was.
I only know she saw what I couldn't, warned me in the only language she had, and disappeared like frost in sunlight. Sometimes grace arrives disguised as an old woman counting pennies, and pays you back by leaving footprints in snow you were told to erase. I still shovel the driveway every winter, but only after dawn.